if we start hitting an hour, just
I got you. 20 to 25. It depends on what y'all. When we get to 20, we'll see how y'all doing.
okay.
Okay.
All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, this is John Covington again, Chief Steward of the Memphis Police Association, and I'm very excited today to have a special guest with us on our first show, which is Bill Gibbons. And I tell you, Bill, I Wikipedia'd myself one time, and nothing came up. I'm sad to say. But I Wikipedia'd you, and quite a bit showed up, and I wanted just to, so the audience knows some of the things you've done, I wanted to cover them real quick. So currently, you are the Executive Director at the Public Safety Institute at the University of Memphis.
Correct.
And we'll talk about that. President of the Memphis Shelby Crime Commission.
Correct.
So far, so good. We'll talk about that too. You served as both in earlier years the Memphis City Council and the County Commission.
True.
So far, so good. Former district attorney here in Shelby County, or the 30th Judicial
Right.
District. And that was 2.5 terms, is
Well, yeah, basically 16 years.
16
So,
years. Okay, great. And then you were also commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security until 2016.
That is correct.
Okay, so you've had an impressive background, and we'll talk about some of those things. But let's kind of start at the beginning. So you were born in southern Arkansas.
Right.
I'm talking
You've
about
done a lot of research.
the
on
very
me.
very beginning. I tell you, Wikipedia is very amazingly thorough. This is a good way to test it. Graduate of Central High School here in Memphis, of course.
Right.
What age did you move or come to Memphis?
Well, I moved here when I was 18 for the same reason so many people, especially in the South, move from rural areas to the city, really because my family was seeking more opportunity.
Right.
And that's a story for many, many people, especially in the South.
It is a story of my family as well. You know, Memphis, the big city lights are the big
Right.
city here in this area. So you graduated, went to Vanderbilt.
Right.
At some point, became interested in the law, clearly because you went to law school at Vanderbilt. And then you were in private practice here in
Right.
Memphis. So, what got you interested in this path?
Well, that I'll try to give a simple answer to that. But by the time I was going to high school here at Central, I was really very, very committed to the city of Memphis. Actually, even before that, it's just a kid growing up in South Arkansas. My family had roots in Memphis. I yearned for the day that I could live in Memphis. So when I got here, I was really excited to be in the city. And then I began to look at the issues and the problems facing the city. So pretty early on, I became interested in the whole issue of crime prevention and crime reduction. And then when I became a member of the city council, it was really an opportunity to try to do something about this particular challenge. And I was really the one on the city council who got the city involved in funding an effort to organize neighborhood watch programs to get citizens more involved in crime prevention and reduction. And we were able to provide some city funds to help neighborhood watch groups. Then when I moved over to the county commission, I continued that effort and got some county funding to assist neighborhood watch groups. So initially my involvement in this was not so much on the law enforcement side as on getting citizens involved in helping make our community safer. Then I became district attorney, and my focus changed a little bit. And when I became district attorney, I early on determined that the district attorney's office did not just need to be a reactive public agency, simply reacting to the cases that come in the pipeline, but needed to be proactive and really have some policies and practices in place that could have an impact on the crime rate. An example of that is the no plea bargaining policy that we implemented for the most violent crimes. And under that policy, we took the position that once someone was indicted for a major violent crime, murder, rape, aggravated robbery, that we would not plea bargain that case unless there was some ethical or legal reason that came up. The prime example being you find out you had the wrong person, of course.
Sure.
But barring something like that, our position was we would not plea bargain. And that's an example of kind of a proactive policy by the DA's office that was, one, designed to hold those committing violent crimes accountable, but two, to serve as a deterrent effect, to really try to send a signal out to the street level that if you make the bad decision of engaging in that kind of violent crime, the DA's office was going to do everything it could to hold you accountable. So I really tried to focus on those kinds of practices and policies in the DA's office. Then, of course, I went to the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, where part of my job was to oversee our highway patrol.
Right.
And again, I really wanted to try to make sure that as a law enforcement agency, the highway patrol was being proactive. And so one thing we did was to train every single road trooper on interdiction efforts, how to handle interdiction, to make sure it was handled the right way so that cases would hold up in court. So we really made an intensive effort to provide troopers that kind of training. So when they pulled somebody over who may be engaged in drug trafficking, for example, they
Right.
really knew how to handle that stop effectively and in the right way. So that's a long answer to your question, I guess, but that's really kind of how I got involved. Initially, focusing on citizens get involved in fighting crime, but then kind of moving over from the perspective of prosecutor and then someone overseeing a law enforcement agency.
Well, and that to me, that's one of the things that makes your journey very interesting to me because, and we kind of talked before we started taping how, and we just talked to Sandy and Ariel about the gun walks against, or the walks against gun violence, and we'll talk about that too, which you were a prime mover in that. So you've been able to approach or see crime from a political perspective, from a state perspective, looking on a state level and here locally, and as a DA, from the law enforcement perspective, and then and now more recently from the community aspect. Though you were involved in neighborhood watches early on. Do you see, looking at that kind of holistic way? Do you see one more important in the other, or is it all a cohesive effort that it's going to take to kind of make a dent in these things that we deal with?
Wow, John, I would say it has to be a cohesive effort.
Mm-hmm.
The police can't do it alone. They need the help of citizens and prosecutors. Prosecutors can't do it alone, and citizens can't do it alone. It takes everybody working together, which to some degree kind of gets to my current job is president of the Crime Commission, because really what the Crime Commission tries to do is identify best practices, evidence-based, evidence-informed best practices, and then try to get all of the key stakeholders behind a common plan to implement those kinds of best practices. And as you know, we have a 50-member board.
Yes.
It's kind of like herding cats, but what we've tried to do through that board is try to get all key stakeholders in the same room agreeing to the same community plan to prevent and reduce crime, and then in a diplomatic way, trying to hold stakeholders accountable for taking the steps necessary to implement the plan.
And I have to say, the Memphis Police Association recently was invited to join, and our president, Oscar Rosario, and that was a great honor for us, and we're very excited about it. And to your point, in sitting in the meetings, it's so impressive to see the wide array across politics, community organizing, just all these points of view, all these strong personalities too, without question. These are all I get to sneak in and see, but these are all really impressive folks, and me sitting there. But it is impressive, and I'm also kind of drawn to you. It's not your standard kind of organization. I mean, you've got such a broad approach, and so what are some of the specific programs that you think have been most effective coming out of the Crime Commission?
Well, first of all, when you say it's impressive, I'm glad you say that. However, we've been meeting virtually.
Yes.
For obvious reasons. We're hoping to go back to in-person board meetings in July, and hopefully you'll be even more impressed, because when we have in-person board meetings, there's much more interaction than there is virtually. So hopefully you'll see that. In terms of things that we're really kind of focusing on right now and pushing and advocating, let me mention 2 or 3.
Okay.
First of all, something important to the Memphis Police Association is our shortage of police officers.
Yes.
And we have been really working on that and advocating steps to address that. This year, we were supportive of legislation at the state level to do away with the current residency requirement. It passed the state Senate.
Right.
It got bumped till next year in the state House, but we're going to still be at it, and we're going to be actively advocating for that and encouraging members of the State House of Representatives to pass that. So that's an example of what we're doing. Another thing, which was, I think, pretty significant, was the fact that over the last 3 years, the Crime Commission raised $6.1 million in private money to help pay for retention bonuses for Memphis police officers and recruitment bonuses. And I hope that's helped. Going and, I'm not telling you anything that you and other police officers don't know, but through 2017, between 2012 and 2017, we were having a net loss of police officers year after year.
That's right.
Beginning in 2018, we were able to reverse that and had some net gain, not as much as we need. But I would like to think that the retention bonuses help that in terms of reversing that trend. Of course, in 2020, we had another net loss of police officers. And in part, that was because of the pandemic. As you know, one class was canceled due to the pandemic. But hopefully, we'll have a net gain in 2021 as well. But I would like to think that the $6.1 million that the Crime Commission raised in private funds at least helped in terms of reversing that trend of net losses.
Well, and yes, definitely that. And I'm glad you brought up this residency issue. It's something that the Memphis Police Department and the Sheriff's Office extremely supportive of. And the MPA, as representative of the officers, was extremely supportive from the beginning. We were extremely disappointed when the citizens were not allowed to vote on it. That was taken away, and so we do hope, and of course we're going to do everything we can to hopefully that changes, because in this highly competitive world we live in, opening up that pool of talent and ability, and it's just immeasurable the impact it would have.
Yeah.
So,
and I might mention one more thing on that. The Crime Commission did commission a professional public opinion poll in July 2020.
Yes.
By a very reputable polling outfit that has a reputation for accuracy in this community. And what that survey showed was the vast majority of Memphians want more police officers. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And of course, the City Council has set a goal of 2,500 police officers. I think the only way to ever reach that goal is to expand the pool, which involves addressing the residency requirement. If I could go back to your initial question, let me mention 2 more quick things that we're really focused on this year. One is something that District Attorney Amy Wyrick is heading up, and that is called the Focused Deterrence Initiative.
Okay.
It is a proven best practice if implemented correctly. It's worked in other cities. But basically what it involves is focusing on those offenders who are responsible either directly or indirectly because of their influence over others for a sizable part of our violent crime. And you know, we know who they are.
Right.
So part of this effort is to identify them, call them in, and talk turkey with them and
Sure.
say, we want to help you move in the right direction. And if you need an educational opportunity or housing or jobs, we'll try to help you move in the right direction. We will try to help you change your behavior. But if you don't do that, we're going to do everything we can to hold you accountable. And I've attended a number of these call-ins. If you haven't, I would urge you to attend some. But they're really interesting because you have representatives of social service agencies there, but you have the district attorney, the U.S. attorney, the police director, the sheriff there as well. And they make the point very clear that these individuals will be held accountable if they don't change their behavior.
Well, just on that, just real quick on that,
Yeah.
I think, and that's getting back to kind of this holistic approach to crime, and it's and something I've always believed in, and I think we share in this, is that if you're going to commit the crimes, that you want a strong deterrent and a strong active policing that, but at the same token, to give opportunity. You know, to come at it from both sides, because
Right.
that's truly the only way we can ever really solve it. So, but that's a fantastic program.
Yeah.
And you were going to say.
And in 2021, we're pushing to really scale that effort up.
Okay.
It's already been scaled up. General Wyrick in February of this year had 3 additional call-ins of these offenders, which added about 100 people to the effort. But I'm hopeful that as we move forward in 2021, it can be scaled up even more. And let me mention one more thing.
Sure.
Juvenile crime is a real challenge.
Yes.
Roughly half of all the juveniles going through juvenile court for delinquent acts have been there before. They are repeat offenders. So we're really focusing on pushing an effort to reduce the number of repeat offenders by assessing what's going on in a juvenile's life or that juvenile's family life the very first time that juvenile encounters law enforcement, to try to break that cycle
Right.
of repeat offenses. And there's a lot going on right now. I'm having meetings virtually every day on this issue, trying to kind of move the ball down the field on that. But I think that's very, very important.
Well, I think that's the key. You know, the next generation, and it's kind of this work that you do that we may not see the fruits of it immediately, but you know, it's going to impact the future, and as you say, break the cycle and just, you know.
Right, and we will see some impact immediately in 2 ways. One, hopefully we can move that young person in the right direction, so we're salvaging that young person. But number 2, if that juvenile is not engaging in repeat acts of delinquency, we're reducing the crime rate.
Right.
So
That's true.
it has that immediate impact as well.
Now, speaking of young people, I was a teacher before I became
Right.
a police officer, and sometimes getting up in front of a bunch of students and captivating them for an hours, running into bank robberies might be easier. I'm not sure.
Well, I teach at the University of Memphis.
What I was going to
so
get into
I understand.
is the Public Safety Institute, and that's another way, I think, of engaging younger people. And so talk a little bit about what the mission is there
Yeah.
and how that works.
Well, the Public Safety Institute is a research entity focusing on applied research. And by applied research, I mean research that can be utilized by stakeholders in terms of identifying best practices, things that work.
Right.
And it's tied to the Crime Commission, because one thing the Public Safety Institute is doing is evaluating or assessing various parts of the Safe Community Plan as those parts are implemented, to determine
Okay.
what's working and what's not working, If it's not working, why? Is it because maybe it was a bad idea, we just kind of missed the mark? Or is it because it's not being implemented properly? But really kind of delve into that and make that determination. Now, the Public Safety Institute also does some research outside the scope of the Safe Community Plan. I mean, we seek various federal grants and so on to do all kinds of research, but it's really designed to add something to the local Safe Community Plan that we had not had in the past, and that's really assessing and evaluating what parts of it are working and what parts are not, and if not, why.
And that's interesting.
And also, as part of that, I also do teach criminology at the university.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier some polling you did, and there was things that jumped out at me, but was there anything that surprised you about, and it was, questions across kind of the spectrum about crime in Memphis and attitudes and so forth?
Well, I was surprised a little bit at the scope of support for the police. I mean, I frankly expected the survey to show support for the police.
Correct.
But, for example, there was a question in the survey as to whether or not those being surveyed respected police officers. 95% said they'd respected police officers. That's really off the charts.
Well,
now at the same time,
you mentioned that. It jumped out at me too, and that's exactly what I have right here.
At the same time, the survey showed there are some areas where there can be room for improvement.
Yes.
For example, a fairly sizable percentage, and I don't remember the exact percentages, but you seem to maybe have them in front of you there. I don't know.
I do.
But a fairly sizable percentage indicated that police could do a better job of tackling violent crime, a better job of solving crime. To some degree, that might be a reflection of the fact that we don't have enough police officers, because while a fairly sizable percentage of respondents indicated that, they also supported more police officers. That's not inconsistent at all.
Right.
If you want the police to do a better job of tackling violent crime and a better job of investigating crime, part of the answer might be that you need more police officers. So there was some consistency in those results. There is also a fairly sizable percentage of respondents who had some real questions about use of excessive force, an issue that's been in the media a lot.
Sure.
Not a majority, but a large enough percentage to know that it's an issue of some concern that needs to be addressed.
Well, it was a very interesting poll, and I encourage folks to go to the website for the Crime Commission, and it's what is the website? Memphis Crime.
MemphisCrime.org.
MemphisCrime.org.
Really
easy to remember.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people just to go and see what they have to offer on the website, and some of these poll results, because you really get some real insight. And what I like about the poll, if you dig into it and look at demographically, I think it really does capture a true photograph.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you look at the poll results in terms of the high respect for police officers,
yes,
the desire for more police officers, it's across the board. Black, white, men, women, very consistent results there.
Well, Bill, you're doing great work, and we're very excited to become involved and work with and support the mission that you're doing. And I know we talked to Sandy and Ariel. We have our next gun walk coming up.
Yes.
And we can't mention it enough.
And I want to make a pitch for that.
Oh, please do.
And I know they already have.
Here it is.
But
let the folks know.
We've been very involved in organizing walks against gun violence in our community. And I don't know if we have time. Can I give a little background on this?
Please do.
I don't know. Tell me if we're running out of time.
We can.
But
we can go.
Last summer, we had so many shootings in Memphis that were high profile, a lot of concern about it. And there's a guy named Stevie Moore. You probably ought to have him as a guest sometime.
He is on my list.
Okay.
He'll be upcoming.
And
yes.
Stevie has been out there beating the drum about gun violence for 15 plus years. His son was killed as a result of gun violence. But he's kind of been a lone drummer out there. And Stevie and I were talking last summer about the need to mobilize the community to demand that we do something about the level of gun violence in this community. And Stevie and I quickly agreed that we needed to start organizing community events for citizens to really step out and say they're fed up with gun violence and demand that people in a position to do something act on this. We then quickly brought in District Attorney Amy Wyrick to help us begin organizing this. We then reached out to Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, and before we knew it, we had about 10 or 15 partners for the very first Walk Against Gun Violence, which was in November of 2020. We had no idea how many would show up. We simply crossed our fingers and hoped that, we'd have a good turnout. Well, the count was about 450 people who turned out for that initial walk. Then the number of partners began to grow, and we're very glad to have the Memphis Police Association as one of the partners.
Oh, yes.
And now we have, I believe, over 20 partners sponsoring these walks. The second walk was in February of this year in Whitehaven. We had over 500 walkers. And the next walk is going to be on Saturday, April 24th in Fraser, beginning and ending at the MLK Prep Academy. The walk route is 1.9 miles. We need a big turnout to send a clear message that this community is fed up with gun crime. It's not acceptable behavior. It really sent a message to those who are in a position to act and do something to recognize that the public wants action.
Well, thank you, Bill. As I say, please come out to the walk. The more people, the more we spread the message, and there will be more walks, and there will be information about that forthcoming.
And that's at 10 a.m. on Saturday,
Yes.
April 24th.
So we hope to see you there. Bill, I just want to thank you so much. You've been a great public servant throughout your life. You've continued to be a servant, and it's been a real honor to get to know you and work with you, and I'm just so glad you could come today. And we barely scratched the surface to so many of these things. We'd love to have you back at some point. So, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest, and also I want to thank the Memphis Police Association for its willing to be a member on the Crime Commission Board of Directors. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you, sir. It's a great honor to be invited to be there, and thank you. So again, thanks, Bill, and thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.